I would like to reconvene the meeting from closed session and call this meeting to order for the City Council meeting of October 19th, 2021. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll and make an announcement about the accessing the meeting?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll make the announcement first.
Okay.
In order to participate in the City Council meeting virtually, please register to speak using the link on the agenda under public comment or call 1-669-900-9128 and use webinar ID number 846-4276-0906. To raise your hand to speak on a particular agenda item, please use the raise hand button in the Zoom meeting portal. If you are using a phone, please press *9 on your telephone keypad to raise your hand to speak and press *6 to unmute your phone. When it is your time to speak, your microphone will be unmuted for the time allotted by the mayor and will be muted upon completion of your comments. Madam Mayor, I'll call roll. Councilmember Cordero?
Here.
Councilmember Escobedo?
Here.
Councilmember Soto?
Here.
Councilmember Waterfield?
Present.
And Madam Mayor Patino?
Here. City Attorney, Mr. Watson, could you please give the closed session report?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Mayor and Council, and this evening we had a closed session pursuant to 54957.6 of the Government Code related to labor negotiations with respect to the listed organizations, and instructions were provided to the agency representative. No
Okay.
further report.
Thank you. The first item on our agenda this evening is a proclamation, and Councilmember Escobedo will be making the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This proclamation is for the National Disability Employment Awareness Day. Whereas the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed 31 years ago, and whereas the theme of National Disability Employment Awareness Month 2021 is America's Recovery Powered by Inclusion, and whereas the City of Santa Maria recognizes and values the educational, social, and humanitarian contributions of its many citizens with disabilities, and whereas these contributions have been made possible thanks to the tireless efforts of self-advocates within the self-advocacy movement, the civil rights movement of people with disabilities, locally, nationally, and internationally. And whereas the monumental achievements of self-advocates are to be recognized and celebrated, and whereas the self-advocates continue to work to ensure that persons with disabilities are afforded the same opportunities as people without disabilities, and whereas the services and resources in the City of Santa Maria help ensure that persons with disabilities are included as valued members of the community and have access to the more independent, productive, and fulfilling lives. Now, here therefore, is Alice M. Patino, Mayor of the City of Santa Maria, hereby is recognized October 2021 as the National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And this proclamation will be accepted by Marshall Hoffer and Michael Vargas of BTC.
Excuse me, Mr. Vargas, if you'd like to say a few words, you can go right up to on the other side, go right up to the podium, and there's the speaker right there.
Thank you, guys. And I wanted to say BTC is the family, it's the home, and we all work hard together, and it's a good place to work for a community. If people have disability, I would just to come and work with.
Thank you very
us.
much, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Next, we have the public comment period. Madam Clerk, could you please read the criteria for the public comment portion of the agenda?
This time is reserved to accept comments from the public on consent agenda items, closed session items, or matters not otherwise scheduled on the printed agenda this evening. Unless otherwise directed by the mayor, the speakers generally will have 3 minutes to comment. Direction to staff may be given, however, state law does not allow action to be taken on matters not on the printed agenda. Once the public comment period commences, no other speakers will be allowed to submit a request to speak form. Madam Mayor, I believe you instructed 2 minutes for speakers. And currently we have 17 in the building to speak, and I have 4 individuals. One has raised their hand on Zoom to speak. Here are the first 17.
Okay, do we have 4 on Zoom to speak or just 1?
Well, we have 4 total, but only 1 has raised their hand.
But, okay, that's 18? Okay. Okay, and you'll set the time?
Yes.
Okay. Lisa Toke? And that'll be 2 minutes, okay?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, and city staff. My name is Lisa Toke, and you may remember me from quite a bit of time I spent in front of you a couple years ago. I represent the 3 largest mobile home parks in Santa Maria, Casa Grande, Casa del Rio, and Rancho Buena Vista. As many of you recall, we did spend about a year negotiating some issues with regard to residents of mobile home parks and their leases. And you are being asked to revisit those very same issues at this point in time by some resident representatives. The result of the meetings that we spent a year on was an enforcement agreement and a model lease that the City Council voted on in November of 2019. Hard to believe it was that long ago. My clients signed that agreement, the enforcement agreement, and they have been complying with it for almost 2 years now. The term of that enforcement agreement is 10 years, which means that mobile home park matters relating to leases between owners of mobile home parks and residents are governed by that agreement for the next 8 years. They are not to be governed by any rent control ordinance during that time period. Now, the resident representatives, who I'm sure are going to be speaking after me tonight, would have you forget about that history, and they would like the council to consider a rent control ordinance, notwithstanding the terms of the agreement that the City Council had already approved back in November of 2019. Those resident representatives want you to believe that a rent control ordinance will fix our very broken housing system. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary Hall, followed by Eric Wells.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. You have a chance to protect mobile home affordability. My name is Gary Hall. I'm a resident of Rancho Buena Vista Mobile Estates at 2135 North Railroad Avenue here in Santa Maria. I represent the North Santa Barbara County Mobile Homeowners team. We have declared October 19th as our day of action. My fellow mobile home owners and I are here to plead with you to do the right thing. We bring hundreds of Santa Maria resident signatures on a petition to the City of Santa Maria demanding a mobile home rent stabilization ordinance be adopted this year. We also bring letters of endorsement from a variety of local organizations that have supported our efforts, and some of their representatives are here tonight also. Mobile home residents are here from several parks to say, we are united. We are united in this effort. Please listen to their pleas for help. Now let me clarify something. Passage of mobile home rent stabilization ordinance will not replace a lease if you, the tenant, doesn't want to. It does give us a choice. Let's have an open debate. Put mobile home rent stabilization ordinance on the agenda. Thank you.
Eric Wells, followed by Maria Ventry. Followed by then Frank Thompson. Good evening, Mr. Wells.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Thank you for having us. My name is Eric Wells, and I am one of the owners of Casa del Real Mobile Estates, one of the 3 largest parks in the city. And I've been a resident of the Central Coast for over 50 years. I grew up in Santa Maria, and my family moved up from the LA area in 1970 to start the park with the intent of providing affordable housing for seniors. And I just want you to know that we've been engaged with our residents. We care about our residents. We care about them being able to afford space rent in our mobile home park. We also have been fully compliant with the enforcement order, and we are engaged and want to continue to be compliant. And I think you're going to hear that some of the residents feel like rents are very high, and I do understand that. It's painful to pay rent as a renter myself, and I feel like mobile homes in general are some of the most affordable housing to comparable properties. And I provided a handout which shows 5 comparables that I pulled off Craigslist this morning. And these aren't comparing to other mobile homes. These are mobile homes compared to other types of 2 and 3 bedroom housing. And we're on the low end of the spectrum. In fact, some of the rents on some of these properties are up to 5 times what you'd pay in space rent. And I just want you to be aware that it's our goal to provide valuable but affordable housing, and we will continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, could we please stop the clapping so we can get through this? Because we have quite a few speakers tonight, and we have a long agenda tonight, and I would really appreciate that, so thank you. Maria, I think it's Ventry? Yes. Okay. Followed by Frank Thompson, followed by Dean Mitchum.
We wanted to request some more time for interpretation, if that's possible.
Pardon?
We need more time for interpretation, if that's possible.
Yes, it is. So if we're having 2 minutes, you can have 4 minutes.
Okay. Thank you.
Buenas tardes a todos. Antes que nada, ¿cómo están? Espero que bien. Mi nombre es María Ventura y soy mamá de 4 niños.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is well. My name is Maria Ventura, and I'm a mom of 4 kids.
Soy campesina agricultura, mi oficio es en el campo, de fresa, un trabajo pesado, muy pesado por cierto. Soy líder y representante de causa.
I'm a farm worker who works in the fields with strawberries, which is a very hard work indeed. I'm also a leader with cause.
Representando a las familias que viven en las mobile homes y como parte de una de las familias que viven en un espacio como ellos, sé que están subiendo las rentas mucho.
I'm here as a person who rents and lives in a mobile park, and it's part of different families that have to rent in spaces, and know firsthand that the prices have been going up a lot.
Por ejemplo, nosotros empezamos a pagar de 300 a 600 y ahorita estamos pagando de 800 a 900. Hoy en día estamos pagando hasta $1,000.
For example, when we first started renting, we were paying $300, and then it went up to $800, then $900, and now we are paying more than $1,000.
Entonces, una familia que trabaja en el campo y gana más o menos entre 500 a 600 a la semana y pagamos entre 900 y 1,200 al mes, entre estos de la pandemia estamos batallando para poder pagar las rentas que han subido demasiado en los parqueaderos de los mobile homes.
So as a family that works in the fields and makes between $500 and $600 a week and is expected to pay $900 to $1,000 a month for rent, we've been struggling in this pandemic to make ends meet.
Aparte tenemos que pagar los útiles de luz, gas, aseguranzas, internet, que es esencial para nuestros hijos y para nosotros.
On top of that, we're also expected to pay utilities like light, gas, different like things like internet that are essential for our children.
Entonces, a nombre de todas las familias y del liderazgo de causa, queremos hacerles esta petición a la ciudad, al Estado o al gobernador o a quien esté a cargo, que establezca una sola cantidad y ya no suban tanto las rentas de los espacios de trailers.
So on behalf of the different families and on behalf of CAUSE, we want to ask you who are here today to put something, to pass a rent ordinance, rent cap ordinance, so that we can have more protections.
Por ejemplo, mis abuelos viven en unas trailers y viven de sus pensiones. ¿Cómo podrían ellos pagar tanto de renta en algún espacio como este?
For example, my grandparents, who also live in trailer, live off their pensions. How are they expected to keep paying as prices go up?
Porque porque en otros estados no son tan costosos y tal vez estuviéramos un poco mejor viviendo, pero ese no es el caso.
If we were living in another state or maybe in a different place, we'd be able to afford something better, but that's not the case.
Sino tener una oportunidad de vivir dignamente todas las familias en nuestros hogares sin que nos suban tanto las rentas cada 6 meses o cada año.
We deserve to have dignity in where we live, and our families deserve to live somewhere where rent isn't going up every 6 months or year.
Oh, y otra cosa, así sean $5 o $50, son unos dólares más para algunos alimentos que se necesitan en casa.
Can I finish the translation?
Go ahead, finish it.
She was just saying that even if it's $5 or $50 as prices go up, that still hurts them every month and every year. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Frank Thompson, followed by Dean Mitchum, followed by Rich Bailey.
So my name is Frank Thompson, and I live in the Rancho Buena Vista Mobile Home Estates. I'm here tonight in support of rent stabilization. I feel that there has to come a time that we put a stop to the continued raising of rent. My rent has doubled in the 17 years I've been there, and at that rate,
Mr. Thompson, can you speak into the microphone just a little bit more? Yeah, thank you.
I just feel that there has to be a point where the rent stabilizes. We can't continue to raise the way it is. With us being on fixed incomes, our income doesn't go up like the rent does. And eventually it comes to a point where you just can't afford it anymore. So I'm here to support rent stabilization. Thank you.
Thank you. Dean Mitchum, followed by Rich Bailey.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Councilors. My name is Dean Mitchum. I do live at Rancho Buena Vista. As Lisa Toke said, there was a concession 2 years ago, but we never saw that as a win. What we saw was they lowered the floor to 2.5% as their minimum. This year we've got a 5.6% rent increase, which is equivalent to $600 a year, along with the food costs going up, hard goods going up, gasoline. I don't know if you've been to the pump lately. You know, it's just getting really, really tough to hang in there for all of the increases. On the back end of things, when the CPI doesn't increase, we still get a rent increase. I would really appreciate, I ask that you put a rent stabilization order on the agenda to chat about it, get something passed, get something talked about, and save some of my neighbors. You know, I've got a lot of neighbors that don't know how they're going to make it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Rich Bailey, followed by Gracie Diaz, followed by Michelle Cothe.
guess I'm one of those people that he just talked about. The senior citizens of Casa Grande mobile home estates. My Social Security check is $842 a month. I pay over that amount for the rent to Casa Grande. I fortunately have SNAP, so my food mostly is taken care of, but all of the other expenses just pile up incredibly. No repairs on the house possible, and it needs it desperately. It's just too much. And I'm asking for the board to consider other kinds of measures that the owners of the Casa Grande mobile home estates can make money off of rather than us people. Sorry.
Thank you. Gracie Diaz.
Hello there, my name is Gracie Diaz and I live at La Maria's Mobile Home Park. And basically I'm here, of course, for the rent stabilization, as all the group is sitting here for the same reason. And basically what I feel we're asking for is common sense. I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure this one out. Common sense so that the senior citizens can live with a little less tension in their life, not having to worry what's going to happen next year, how are we going to make this rent payment. And right now, me as a senior, I love to volunteer different places, do whatever. I have friends that have to go to work to keep up to just pay the minimum, and I don't want to get to that point. So please put less stress on us, use common sense, listen to what we present to you, and I don't think we're asking too much just to stabilize our rent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Michelle? Did I pronounce your last name right?
Oh, it's Noth, like Noth.
Oh, no. Okay. Thank you.
I'm Michelle Noth, and I live at Casa del Rio Mobile Home Park. And I'm a senior on a fixed income, but I also want you to look around. It's not all just seniors. I mean, it affects everyone, having an increase and increase and increase. Most of us are on fixed incomes. With the last 2.5 years, we've been battered with increases that we have no control over. Like somebody had said earlier, food, gas, transportation. And I just want you to know that we support putting the rent stabilization on the agenda to help those, your mom, your grandmother, your aunt, your uncle. It's not just this little group of seniors that took the time out of their lives to come and talk about it. So thank you. Please consider it.
Thank you. Peggy Brierton, followed by Ed Barba, followed by Roberta Demerit.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Peggy Brierton, I'm a resident of and owner of a home located in Casa del Rio. And the model lease that you spent time and money on of just a few years ago is unenforceable. It is inequitable. It's created with park owners in mind. We need to protect the mobile home space affordability. We're talking about the spaces that we lease. 1,800 lots, those are homes of low-income families, as well as elderly on fixed incomes. We need your help. And the rent stabilization ordinance, Santa Barbara County has adopted one. Many cities and the cities throughout Santa Barbara County, as well as the state. Affordable housing is more critical than ever. So please help us protect mobile home space affordability. Please put it on the agenda for discussion. Thank you.
Ed Barba, followed by Roberta Demerit. followed by Andrea Mayfield.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Ed Barba. I'm a resident of Rancho Buena Vista Mobile Homes. Currently, my wife and I, well, we can afford the recent rent increase, but only because we're going to dip into our savings slowly but surely. If it ever happens, and my wife and I are both in our 80s, if one of us passes, there's going to be a loss of income. You can understand. And in our 80s, we're just going to have to get a second job or get a job, part-time job. Walmart as a greeter or whatever. But we're not going to be able to handle it. And I think my situation is we're better off than many of the other neighbors that I have. I know quite a few people that are widowed, and they're barely making it. I've talked to them, and it's a sad situation for them individually. I ask you to not only put the ordinance on the agenda, but give us something that we can work with and make us part of the future negotiations. Make us part of the future negotiations instead of the city attorney or the city manager dealing with the owner's attorneys and leaving us out of it. That's just not fair. That part is not fair. Thank you.
Roberta Demerit, followed by Andrea Mayfield, followed by Esther Jensen.
Good evening. Roberta Demerit, Casa Buena Vista Mobile Home Park. You may have seen me 2 years ago. We handled the same subject. There wasn't much that came out of it for us, so we're back again. And many of us were here at that time, and we have many new people who, because of the circumstances and their finances, feel that it's important to be here tonight. I just want to put my vote in, my plea in for an ordinance, a mobile home rent stabilization ordinance, and at least be invited and have people discuss this again and look at what we did and what came out of it and what needs to be done further. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrea Mayfield, followed by Esther Jensen, followed by Lisa Casillas Simonson.
Good evening,
Good
Mayor,
evening.
council members. My name is Andrea Mayfield, and I'm at Rancho Buena Vista. I've lived in the park for 15 years. As reported previously, the model lease has unfortunately failed us. All that work that was put in a couple of years ago just hasn't worked out. There are only 3 owners of parks that have signed the agreement with the city. There are hundreds and hundreds of mobile home residents that have never even heard of the model lease, much less been offered the model lease by their management. Only an ordinance governing the amount of annual space rent increases will provide the relief needed to low-income families and seniors who live on fixed income. The point of this ordinance is not to point a finger at 1 or 2 or 3 landlords in the city. The point of the ordinance is to make a consistent, overarching ordinance that will govern all the parks in the city and provide all the residents in the city relief from landlords who are giving incredibly high and unreasonable annual rent increases. We want to cover everybody. So the precedent for RSOs is firmly established. Just locally, the counties and cities of Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo have ordinances. The city of Lompoc, Grover Beach, Morro Bay, Pismo Bay, and another 80 cities around the state of California. This is nothing new, it's nothing revolutionary, it's fair. And we ask you, at this point, please put it on the agenda, let's talk about it, let's discuss it. The past has not worked. We need to do something differently. Thank you.
Thank you. Esther Jensen, followed by Lisa Casillas Simonson, followed by Eileen Armijo.
Madam Mayor and council members, I'm Esther Jensen from the La Maria Senior Mobile Park. We residents are living in today's world on yesterday's income. We're trying to cope. We aren't looking for a handout. We're looking for fairness in our rent increases. Please step up and help us solve this problem. Thank you.
Lisa Casillas.
Yes. Lisa Casillas Simpson.
Simpson,
Yes,
okay.
here tonight. I'm just here this evening to ask for your help in securing our futures. We are a generation of people that are in the sunset of our lives, meaning we have limited resources and options, limited options. We need your help to establish a fair and affordable rent structure to keep us safe, secure, and thriving as we all just prayed for. Thank you.
Thank you. Eileen Armijo.
Good morning, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Eileen Armijo Encinas. I am a constituent and live in La Maria Senior Mobile Home Park. I'm here as an advocate to seek your help in enacting a rent stabilization ordinance for the Santa Maria Mobile Home residents to ensure affordability, housing option for retirees, and low-income residents in your districts. With the continuing pandemic and sky-high inflation, it is now more important than ever to protect our vulnerable citizens from homelessness due to rising lot rents. Santa Maria took an important step providing its support to a model lease. However, without an accompanying rent stabilization ordinance, the model lease is just an example under legislation without any teeth for enforcement. With few low-income housing options available, mobile home parks attract many residents on a fixed income who cannot afford veritable rent hikes. In researching the issue, I found many cities and counties already enacted rent stabilization ordinance to protect their vulnerable citizens. Why not Santa Maria? Thank you.
Thank you. Leah Marie Mix.
Hello, my name is Leah Marie Mix. Mix is in Tom or cake, depending on your age. Hello, Mayor, members of everything else. I'm sorry, I'm rattled from something that happened earlier today. You've heard it all, so I'm going to address this to any and all property owners and pass this on. There's a book out there most of you read called the Bible. In that book is a list of rules and regs called the 10 Commandments. The first commandment says, "Thou shalt not have false gods before thee." Money is a false god. When are we going to get the property owners to understand this? Is it all about money? Does it not matter about us as humans? I'm 74 years old and I'm working part-time and probably will have to till the day I die, because I earned women's wages and I will never be able to, quote, retire. And then we had our rent raised double at Rancho Buena Vista. Double. Why? Why do these owners need all this money? Because I don't see it in the park. So please pass this on to your managers, and maybe the managers can talk to the owners if you can't, and ask them why they adore the god of money. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes the public comment portion of the agenda.
Madam Mayor, we have...
Oh, I'm sorry, we have one on Zoom.
Yes.
That's right.
We have Ms. Sarah McDonald on the line, and if there is anyone else who wants to speak, please at this point raise your hand in Zoom.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council and people in the audience. Well, today I come speaking to you as one of the impacted communities. I'm speaking for the rent stabilization, not as a person who lives in a mobile home park, but as a person who is of extremely low wealth. I also would like to have everybody become sensitized to the rates of the solid waste and all the utilities that may be raised, because those of us who are in the impacted communities, and I work for the Poor People's Campaign, and we all know that when we lift from the bottom, everybody rises, and that I pledged to protect I've taken the Matthew 25 pledge to protect the vulnerable in the name of Jesus. I'm just heartbroken with some of these stories. So please, let us reason together for all our sakes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald. Before we move on, Mr. Stillwell, did you wish to make any comments? Okay. Moving on to the consent calendar, Madam Clerk, could you please read item number 3?
Routine items are presented for City Council approval without discussion as a single agenda item in order to expedite the meeting. The consent calendar is approved by roll call vote with one motion. These items are discussed only on the request of council members.
Does anyone have items they wish to pull for discussion?
Madam Mayor, if not, I'd like to adopt the consent calendar as submitted.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve this consent calendar. Any discussion at all? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Waterfield?
Aye.
Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
Councilmember Escobedo?
Aye.
Councilmember Soto?
Aye.
And Madam Mayor Patino?
Aye. Next, we have appointments. Madam Clerk, could you please read the title and give the staff report? Oh, I'm sorry.
The City Council will consider making appointments to the Bloc Grants Advisory Committee. Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, the request before you tonight is to make those appointments just mentioned. The Bloc Grants Advisory Committee currently has 5 vacancies. Staff received 8 new applications from Isaac Berman, Angie Bolden, Craig Chamberlain, Carmen Escalante, Ronald Jacobs, Shauna Nichols, Jennifer Camacho Tiberico, hope I said that right, and Kimberly Washington. The application for Kimberly Washington has been pulled from consideration as it was determined after the agenda was posted that the applicant did not live in the city limits of Santa Maria. It is the policy of the City Council per policy number 88-2 adopted May 17th, 1988 to appoint residents of the city to boards, commissions, and committees. Councilmember Cordero has 1 nomination to fill a 3-year term ending July 2024 and 1 nomination to fill an unexpired term ending July 2023. Councilmember Waterfield has 2 nominations to fill, 1 for an unexpired term ending in July 2023 and 1 for an unexpired term ending in July 2022. Please note that your first nomination will be assigned to the longest term outstanding, and your second nomination will be assigned to the shorter term outstanding. Councilmember Escobedo has 1 nomination to fill a 3-year term ending in July 2024. Appointments will be confirmed by the mayor following nominations and ratified by the City Council.
Okay, Councilmember Cordero, do you have any nominations?
Yes, I do, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much. I'd like to nominate Ronald Jacobs and Isaac Berman.
Okay, Councilmember Escobedo, do you have any nominations?
Yes, I do, Madam Mayor.
I would like to nominate, I would like to have the pleasure to nominate Jennifer Camacho.
Okay, and Councilmember Waterfield, do you have a nomination?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I would like to nominate Angie Bolden, and I still have one outstanding that I'll take care of next.
I'll accept these nominations and make a motion to appoint these nominees to the Block Grants Advisory Committee. Can I hear a second? And I have a second. Any further discussion?
I would like to make a comment, if that, may I?
Sure.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Jennifer. It's a pleasure for you. It's just an honor to volunteer, and when you give to the community, it's just, I really respect the people that do that. I respect the people that volunteer their time that could have been at home, not doing nothing, or just watching TV. But people, everybody who's interested in participating in the city and volunteer their time in this as a commissioner, I respect that a lot, and I admire everyone, and hopefully the ones that were not appointed this time are going to be able to in the future, or maybe other committees as well. So thank you, and thank you, Jennifer, especially, and I know that you're going to do a great job.
Okay, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Madam Mayor Patino?
Aye.
Councilmember Waterfield? Aye. Councilmember Escobedo?
Aye.
Councilmember Soto?
Aye.
Councilmember Waterfield, we're all done. Did I forget somebody? Councilmember Cordero. Sorry. I got everybody out of order.
Mr. Cordero,
just the
you wanted to say
leftovers.
something.
Yes. Aye. Yes, I wanted to say that I had a opportunity. I like to talk to these people personally, and I had the pleasure of speaking with Isaac last year, and he received glowing recommendations from the people that I spoke with. And I went a little beyond the people that he gave me. And when I talked to people about Ronald Jacobs, he also received extremely glowing recommendations and support from other community members that I think everybody on this council would recognize. And it's really special that we have this caliber of people that want to get involved and help us to decide what we're going to do with that CDBG money. And thank you very much.
I see Mr. Baruman here this evening. Do we have any other, is Ron Jacobs here? Oh, would you like to stand, please, Mr. Baruman? Is Jennifer Camacho here? And Angie Bolden? I don't see Angie. Okay, well, thank you, gentlemen, very, very much. I think, this is a great commission to be on, because you're going to be able to see Santa Maria and learn about the needs and all the resources that are out there and the agencies that help fill those needs. So thank you very much for being willing to serve. Thank you. Next, we have a public hearing. Madam Clerk, could you please read the title?
The City Council will receive a staff presentation regarding solid waste collection rates, conduct a public hearing, determine whether a majority protest exists, and consider an ordinance approving solid waste collection rates effective January 1, 2022, and thereafter each July 1st, commencing in 2022 through 2025.
Staff report is to be made by Director of Utilities, Mr. Springer.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. I have with me tonight Herb Cantu. He's our solid waste manager to my right, and we'll be working our way through this item. Thank you. As Ms. White mentioned, tonight I'll be giving a presentation which will include an overview of the solid waste division, talk about the rate setting process, the proposed rates proposed by staff, discuss the public hearing requirements, and then request council action. The City Solid Waste Division serves over 20,000 customers. That includes residential service 1 time a week with recycling green waste on alternate weeks. In addition, we provide commercial service primarily through dumpsters, which could provide service up to 6 times a week, and as well as recycling and organics. All told, we collect 85,000 tons annually from the community of Santa Maria. This is done by a staff of 26 in operations. These are the people that are driving the trucks day to day, 2 support office staff, and 1 management staff. To accomplish this, we have 27 refuse collection trucks and 3 delivery field trucks that would be working to replace canisters or dumpsters. So the rate setting process, on the left side you'll see a triangle, and these are cost-based rates. So we start with determining the revenue requirement. Based on the cost of service, then we determine how costs are allocated, and then a rate design. This would have happened with any business or happen nationwide. Because we're in California, the triangle to the right comes into play. That is the Proposition 218 requirements. And this is where we have notice requirements, majority protest provisions, and council action. So as I work my way through each of these, I'll describe them in more detail. So as I mentioned, Proposition 218. So property-related fees, such as these, requires a cost basis for establishing rates. They need to be reasonable, proportional, and cost-based. In addition, it requires public notification and a protest process. So in our particular case in Santa Maria, the majority protest, we have 20,100 solid waste accounts. A majority would constitute 10,051 protests. The revenue requirement portion determines the level of revenue necessary for the division. This includes using prudent financial planning criteria. So this is to ensure that we have the revenues necessary to support the collections, operations, and capital, adequate funding for renewal and replacements of materials, and meet target ending reserve balances. The time period is a very specific time period. We look at a 10-year time period overall so that we can have a smoothing of rates and ensure that we're not going to have price jolts, if you will. Our primary focus, though, is in the next 5-year period. These fund is analyzed on a standalone basis, so there's not a transfer of funds between collections and other funds, such as disposal, the general fund, et cetera. And lastly, we utilize a cash basis methodology. This is the generally accepted method for municipal utilities. So when we look at the revenue requirements, we look at what some of the expense drivers are for the solid waste collections. Big drivers for us are increased state regulations, compliance enforcement, monitoring, and reporting. The CalPERS pension costs that we're all familiar with. Fleet costs, and these are driven by requirements through the California Air Resources Board, CARB, for diesel emissions and that sort of thing. Disposal costs as those increase, as well as recycling costs. All told, these expense drivers alone are projected to be a $5.1 million a year increase in costs. These are major cost drivers for us, and they don't include costs due to general inflation and that sort of thing. So when I talk about recycling costs, there are some important things that have come along over the years. Assembly Bill 341 was the mandatory commercial recycling. Assembly Bill 1826, mandatory commercial organics recycling. Senate Bill 1383, which is short-lived climate pollutants, which is essentially organics now for residential. And then the SWORD policy for China. So interestingly, since we've come before council with our last rate increase, we have not adjust those since China's SWORD policy has taken place. I've given presentations to so the policy, you might have seen the articles in the paper, and we've done some council notes about how previously, in the term in the industry now, we call it wish cycling, where everybody's kind of thrown everything in the blue bin. It went down to a port in LA and it went off to China. Over the last several years, China has indicated that the quality of the materials required for recycling has to be much higher, and there are certain materials they're not taking at all. China. Our materials in California primarily went to the ports and then to Asia. Some of those, through various reports, not necessarily Santa Maria, but overall, also ended up in landfills in Asia or being burned, quite frankly. So it was out of sight, out of mind for us. But with that SWORD policy, the markets that were historically there are no longer there. And those are huge cost drivers as far as providing higher quality product or an end market. In fact, for us, recycling costs alone have quadrupled in the last 4 years, up to $1.2 million. It wasn't, well, I'm getting older,
Mr.
but
Springer, I want to stop you there for a minute.
Please.
What do you mean higher quality?
So,
and I hate to get into the weeds on this one, but I just.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's parts to it. We collect the recyclables, but if there were what we call residuals or contaminants in those recyclables. So there are many types of plastic that are not recyclable, but they get thrown into the blue waste bin. So the cost to process those out and pull those out prior to the SORD policy and the, what I'll say, the quality, all of those kind of got bundled up together and shipped off. Now that end recipient, whether that's China or whatever, saying we don't want these other non-recyclables, so the quality of what you send us can't have a certain percentage of contaminants. So that slows down the processing time here in the States to pull those materials out. Frankly, since we've started this process just over the course of the last month, there has been new legislation in California to more clearly identify those things that are recyclable, where the chasing arrow symbol can actually be used on materials, because prior to this, that somebody could put them on just about anything, and it led to confusion, slowed down the processing, and of course the processing costs. So it is hard to overstate what the SORD policy in China has done to the recycling market throughout the country. In other areas that are not regulated by CalRecycle, for example, Ohio, Wyoming, that sort of things, frankly, they're burying those things that would have historically been considered recyclable. In California, we still have requirements as an agency here at the city. We're regulated by CalRecycle to meet diversion requirements. So for us, those expenses just increase to continue to meet those diversion requirements. Those are mandated by the state, and we are compelled to meet them.
I just find it an oxymoron. We have to do their job for them because they are the highest polluter in the world. And it's just,
Yep.
we have to follow their direction.
Right. So as that's occurred, there are, it's sent a jolt through the recycling industry, and there are other locations that are, but it's not simple to come up with where that end use is, whether it's recycled plastics, because as long as petroleum is relatively cheap, getting the virgin plastic stock is cheaper for a producer than to get recycled materials. So without that cost driver, there's not necessarily a very a large end market for it. So it's heavily cost subsidized, and due to our requirement to offset with CalRecycle, those are costs that unfortunately are a burden on our ratepayers. So, so that's kind of the what I would say the typical blue bin recycling is the SORD policy. On top of that, to look at the short-lived pollutants or the organic waste reductions. The goal here for CalRecycle is that those materials do not get placed in the landfill where they currently break down in an anaerobic situation without air, and they generate landfill gas or methane gas. Now in Santa Maria, we work with a third-party vendor. We collect that gas. It goes to an electrical generation plant that generates electricity to offset the grid, as well as a private pipeline to Marion Hospital, where they actually use it for a cogen, where they generate heat to offset their chilling and heating costs, as well as generate electricity. So as far as environmental stewardship in Santa Maria, we are putting that gas to use, but CalRecycle does not want it to be developed at all, so they are pushing the green waste diversion as well as the organics diversion. We anticipate that the cost for the organics recycling will be an additional cost to ratepayers of up to $1 million a year. That is for the collection, the processing, the new programs and reporting, and they are significant. Within the next 2 months, we'll be coming to City Council for an ordinance that we will be requesting the City Council to enact. It is a requirement of CalRecycle that we have something enforceable with respect to these organics, and it is of the nature of quite literally flipping lids and ensuring there's not contamination and that the organics are being recycled. It also will include interjecting the city as a solid waste agency between food producers, for example, restaurants, that sort of thing, and if they have excess food at the end of the day, and food banks or other things of that nature, and making, I don't know what the right word is, making sure that those things that can be reused are, and that's being pushed through the requirements of the city from solid waste collection, not through the Food and Drug Administration on a federal level, or even through county health for regulating restaurants. So when these Senate bills and assembly bills get adopted, then Cal Recycle promulgates rules in compliance with those, and that's where we're at. So as we project what those costs are, that's part of the reason that we're coming to council tonight, talking about how we need to adjust the rates to cover these expenses.
So that means that there will be more increases on top of this than in the next year?
We anticipate that our, the request that we have, and that's part of the reason that we're requesting over the 4 fiscal year period, is that our projected costs then kind of smooth those rate increases. And I'll get to a chart a little bit that shows how we get there. So by plugging in what we anticipate for those expenses to meet our recycling requirements, our diversion requirements, our fleet replacement costs, our personnel costs, all those things, we come up with a revenue requirement. And based on that, we've determined that revenue adjustments are necessary. So we know that we need them to fund operation and maintenance expenses, capital expenses, and meet ending reserve targets. So what the revenue requirement tells us is that we need approximately an additional $5.7 million per year at the end of this horizon. And I'll show that in a chart here. Remember, 5.1 of those is accounted for in just organics diversion, PERS cost, fleet cost, disposal cost, and recycling cost. This chart, I know it's bigger on that, well, my screens are smaller. Okay. The gold bars represent total revenues, the blue bars represent expenditures. So what's important, what I'd like to point out importantly here is that the rates that we're requesting from the City Council with beginning implementation of January 2022 and then each July after that up through 2025 is that we are smoothing that rate of, or the rate of implementation of the rates so that we slowly match the gold bar to the blue bar, which you see at the far end of the chart. Every year that the gold bar is below the blue bar, our revenues are below our expenses, so we're essentially spending down reserve balance. Staff is recommending this because it's an opportunity for those rates to slowly ramp up to achieve those costs and not be a shock to our consumers, whether that be on the residential or the commercial side. So once we've determined that there's a revenue requirement, then we need additional revenue. The next step in the process is a cost of service. So what this does is that it's analysis to make sure that we equitably allocate the revenue requirements to the customer classes. This is done because it's generally accepted as being fair and equitable, which is a requirement of Prop 218. It avoids subsidies, so to make sure that, for example, we're not collecting more money from residential customers so that commercial customers pay less or vice versa, and that the revenues themselves reflect cost. And this is important that it meets the proportionality requirements of Proposition 218. So the objective here is to determine if subsidies exist and then to develop average unit cost. So based on this study, and this drives all the way down, we look at, for example, costs that are uniform regardless of the size of the service. So the cost for utility billing, to put the bill together, to print the bill, put the stamp on it, send it out. It doesn't matter if it's a 6-yard commercial container or it's a 60-gallon residential container. That cost is a fixed cost. The other things I talked about, though, is if you have a larger container, the cost to dispose of that at the landfill, the amount of trash, is higher. So it makes sense that a larger container pays a higher proportionate share. If you have more containers, you would pay higher than the person next to you who has one container. So the idea is to develop that proportionality, and we broke this down through the cost of service all the way down to fine detail to ensure that as we went through and did this, that it met the proportionality requirement of Prop 218.
Shad?
Please.
Do the private people that do the garbage, do they have to follow these instructions as well? Or is it just for municipalities? Like what we have the green waste management?
So the requirements of Prop 218 are requirements of public agencies.
Just public agencies, not private?
That's correct, for property-related fees. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
So, sorry. So the cost of service study results, this establishes the basis to develop the equitable cost and then determined that cost differences do exist between residential and commercial service. So based on that and the cost of service, we look at building the rate design. So for us, we continued with similar to our existing rates. We have different customer classes. For example, we separate residential from commercial. They're basically two really different functions. The size of the container, 1690 gallon. The commercial starts at 350 gallon and goes up to 6-yard dumpsters. We still look at our basic rate service for residential, which is the once a week service, and then additional containers after that. Commercial, same way. An important aspect of the rates that I'm requesting this evening is that we also removed tub out service. Tub out service is not property related. This is where the city charges extra if our drivers get out of the truck, walk up, heaven forbid, walk up a residential driveway and roll out the cart for a customer. We have that service available. If people are unable to roll the cart out, it's called tub out service. It's not property related because the city does not have to provide the fee, so we're moving that over to the user fee schedule. So it's just kind of cleaning up how we're setting our rates. So as opposed to a rate, which is Prop 218 related and property related, it's over here in user fees, and that's at the council discretion. Likewise, for compactors and privately owned dumpsters, we're moving those into the user fee section as well. So based on the rate design basis and the revenue requirement, we have proposed rates for residential. So since January 1 of 2017, the 60-gallon container has been the consistent $30.69. As you can see here on the chart, the proposed rates are to go up January 1 for that same 60-gallon container to $32.70, and then over the course of the following 4 fiscal years, it would eventually go up to $40.75. That total increase over that next 5 fiscal years would be $10 a month for the 60-gallon and about $16 a month for the 90-gallon, which is our 2 residential sizes. We have not instituted a rate increase since 2017 over the course of the last 4 years, and I'll point out that that's, as we discussed, these significant changes in recycling requirements, the SORD policy, the organics diversion. So that equates from the last rate increase to the end of this rate increase, almost 9 fiscal years of about $1 a month for residential on the 60-gallon. Please. Go ahead.
Bottom for additional, that's for additional.
Yes.
Bid.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should point that out. So the one below is if, for example, at your residence you wanted 2 60-gallon containers. The first one would be $32.70 a month, and the second one would be $26.57. And if you think of it of economies of scale, and this is based on our cost of service. So our automated side loader is already driven to your house, so that expense is already covered, and they're going to run the arm once for the first canister and twice for the second. They don't have to go back to the landfill and back. You're still only getting billed once a month for that same service, so that kind of one at a time thing. So those costs are a little bit lower for kind of having the second can already there. We're already there, we can pick up the second one cheaper than twice as much. So, yeah. So importantly, in Prop 218, what I've talked about is how we are required by law to set rates, how we come up with the rates. We come up with a revenue requirement, we do a cost of service study so that they're cost-based, and then we determine what those rates are. What I haven't said is we cannot set rates on what the market will bear or what we think is an adequate profit or anything like that. There is no profit involved. We are only allowed to charge as much as the service costs. So it's important for us to compare to other agencies because we want to make sure that we are providing the service in a fair and equitable way for our ratepayers. Are we being cost effective? Are we being efficient? Are we meeting those requirements of the city's mission statement? So while not part of Prop 218, it is important for us internally as staff to make sure that we're not missing something. Is there ways we can do the job better or more cost effectively? So we go out and we do a local agency comparison to see where we're at to make sure that we're not competitive is not the right word, but that we're making sure our customers are getting the value for their buck, if you will. So these are the local agencies we compare to. They are essentially along the central coast here from Arroyo Grande all the way down to Santa Barbara. The next chart's going to be small, I apologize, but these are the agencies that we're comparing to, and what's important is the trend in these charts, and this is for the residential. So what we look at here on the chart on the left is the 60-gallon. The first dark bar there is what the rates would be that I'm requesting for January 1, 2022. And you can see compared to all of the other light-colored bars, we're roughly in the lower third, plus or minus, of the agencies that are comparable to us. The second blue bar over is actually 2026. That would be the rates that we're requesting all the way out till July 1 of 2025, fiscal year 2026. What's important to point out here is even if none of these other agencies increase their rates over the next 5 years, we're still roughly in that middle part of the pack. We do know that most of these agencies plan on raising rates January 1 of next year or each fiscal year after that. It just depends on where they're at in the process. And the 90-gallon residential containers is the same information on the right. So it gives, I'm hopeful, the goal, I guess, of this chart is to let the City Council know that staff and the city in doing operations on its behalf are doing things that are in comparison with agencies that some of these are, well, actually most of these are collections done by private companies on behalf of the agency. So we are doing the work cost effectively and competitively. So that is residential. Commercial is a little more difficult to come up with an average rate because we have some customers that have 12 dumpsters on a parcel being picked up 4 times a week. You can picture, you know, Stoll Shopping Center, for example, that has all of those dumpsters out back, or a very busy restaurant where they have significant trash or recycling on Friday nights. So we do pick up on Saturdays, and Mondays are oftentimes the heaviest days for those that have heavy weekend traffic. So what we look at here is a very gross average for the City Council to compare. We do have in the Council Agenda Report and the resolution the actual rates for number of dumpsters and number of times a week. But for simplicity's sake, for the presentation this evening, we're talking about the gross average. So since January 1 of 2017, the average commercial customer has paid $413 a month. We are proposing that on January 1st, that the average would go to $421.17, and then at the end of this rate period, $491. This is an average commercial rate increase over this horizon of about 3.75% per year, to put that in perspective, or since the last rate increase of 2017, just at about 2% per year, which for us, looking at what those additional organics requirements and recycling requirements, 2% per year is closer to a consumer price index. We've been dealing with fuel increases and other things. So once again, as a indicator of how city staff is doing in comparison to these other agencies. These are the agencies that we compare, and this is the top left chart is for 2-yard. So the smallest dumpster that we provide, you can see that the rates that we're proposing put us roughly right in the middle of the pack with the other agencies. 3-yarder as well, which is the top right chart. 4-yard puts us right in the middle, and then 6-yard. Fewer agencies provide that. There's 6 of them, and 5 out of 6 of us are all about the same price, and I'm not really sure what's going on in Morro Bay.
So, Shad, looking at my notes, you said we are under $5.1 million? And we have an increase in costs, and then those rates that you just explained to us over the years is going to make up for the 5.1 million?
Yes, per year.
Per year?
Correct.
Okay, so we will be collecting 5.1 million per year from just those costs?
For the rates proposed, yes.
For increases, okay.
Yes. That is, yes, sir.
Mr. Springer, and the 5.1 million that you're speaking about, that's just to keep us even. That's not, the city's not making any more money. That's just so that we get to stay in the game at a competitive level.
Yes, sir. And to be crystal clear, these are the costs to provide the service. Under Proposition 218, the city is not allowed to cost more than the cost to the city to provide the service. So,
Okay, I just wanted to emphasize
Yes.
that because to everyone here and the listening public, $5 million is a lot of money, but we're only recovering our cost.
That's correct.
The cost of the budget cost.
The cost to provide the service. You're absolutely right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the council?
Not
Mr.
a
Cordero?
question, Madam Mayor, more of a comment. I can't imagine how difficult it is for you guys to get this job done. One thing is, I compared a pizza box here some time back, and that's got to be one of the most ridiculous things, and going along with what Councilwoman Waterfield said. I don't know that a used pizza box exists. It doesn't have grease or oil in it, yet that's not recyclable under most conditions, correct?
That's correct.
I want you to recycle it from the law standpoint. However, from a practical standpoint, you can't recycle it because the recyclers won't do it, right?
Correct.
Okay, the other thing is, I want to bring up that here just a year and a half or two ago, we sat in this chambers and we evaluated all of the services provided by the city and the costs. And one of the things that we all dinged ourselves on was that it's been a long time since these prices went up, and some of them we asked to go up significantly. And it was commented on by more than one of us here that why didn't these prices get raised incrementally over the years as opposed to waiting 12 years and now all of a sudden we're raising it $40 or whatever. And I appreciate the fact that you're trying to go up incrementally and we're trying to get into it just a little bit at a time so that nobody is here going to experience a $25 or $35 or $45 increase in 7 or 8 years in order to catch us back up. So I think that's astute on your part to try to establish that kind of a graduating cost increase as opposed to waiting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Waterfield?
And Councilmember Cordell, that's really smart. But in 5 years, when we reach that point, what's it going to be to provide the cost, of service again? If the state keeps on making these mandates where our hands are completely tied in all this. It's, it comes from Sacramento, and we have to honor what they say because they're the smartest people in the room, so it's just crazy.
If I may, Madam Mayor, I don't know if there are any other questions. So at this point, as I mentioned, we started the cost of service study, as you mentioned, Councilman Cordero, almost 2 years ago at this point. It took time. We went through it. When you look at 20,000 accounts and we start to slice and dice and figure out how those costs are appropriate for Prop 218, we went through that thorough process. The Prop 218 notices went out to all customers in August in the bill. You're each residents, you each got one. We had a public workshop on September 22nd. Herb and I were here with one member of the public, decided to come. Primary questions were about what they could or could not recycle, not about the rates themselves. And then tonight in our process, we're at the point where I'm requesting that the City Council, according to legal requirements for Prop 218, hold a public hearing. So if it pleases the mayor, I'd be requesting that happen. The public hearing procedure with Prop 218 also talks about the number of written protests. As I mentioned, if a majority protest exists, the City Council may not take action on this item. A majority protest in this case, because we have 20,000, right at 20,100 customers, a majority protest would be 10,051 written protests. And I would ask, Madam Clerk, how many written protests have been received prior to the open of this public hearing?
We have received 6 total written protests that meet the guidelines.
Thank you.
And none presented during the meeting tonight.
Thank you.
So I would request that the council open the public hearing at this time.
Thank you. I'll open up the public, are there any questions? Any more questions? Okay, I'll open up the public hearing. Madam Clerk, do you have any requests to speak or written correspondence?
I have no request to speak in-house, and if we will give a moment, we'll check and see if anyone raises their hand online to speak during this public comment portion. So if we can give it a moment.
And no written correspondence?
No written communications other than the 6 protests that we received. And it doesn't appear that anyone on Zoom would like to speak on
I'll
this.
close the public hearing then and bring this item back to the council for any discussion and/or a motion.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Soto?
I'd like to make a motion to introduce an ordinance for a first reading and continue for a second reading and adoption at the next regular meeting of the City Council, approving solid waste collection rates effective January 1, 2022, and thereafter each July 1st from 2022 through 2025.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to introduce an ordinance approving the solid waste collection rates. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Soto?
Aye.
Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
Councilmember Escobedo?
Before, I would like to bring back some stuff we did a couple of months ago. It was April when we came up with the fee increase for the services we provide, and specifically we have these, the credit card processing fee went up 2.5%. And that's a direct cost to our taxpayers, and now have another increase. And at these difficult times, I find that it's I would like to see if we have other resources like the general fund to, other ways to avoid that charge to be that our constituent will be affected by it. Therefore, I would say no.
Thank you. Councilmember Waterfield?
The general fund and the utilities funds are
Completely different.
Completely different. They have to be separate. You can't mix the two together at all whatsoever.
In the report, one of the options was that according to this, we can use some of that would be one of the options. Is that?
Mr. Springer, you want to clarify? Oh, Mr. Silva, you want to clarify that?
Just at this point, we do have a motion in a second.
Yeah.
If there's more discussion about it, but we shouldn't have the dialogue at this point in the middle of the vote. If the vote fails, we're happy to talk about it. Or if you want to withdraw the motion, we can talk about it. But
Ms. Waterfield?
Aye.
Madam Mayor Patino?
Aye. Next, we have another public hearing. Madam Clerk, could you please read the title?
The City Council will receive a staff report, a staff presentation regarding solid waste user fees, conduct the public hearing, and consider a resolution approving solid waste user fees.
The staff report has been made by the Director of Utilities, Mr. Springer.
How you doing?
Yeah, Honorable Mayor and council members, good evening again. In light of the action that was just taken by the City Council, importantly, for Prop 218, and as Councilmember Escobedo mentioned, actually user fees that were adopted by the City Council in April, there are several user fees that are associated with the solid waste rates that you just moved to approve. And importantly, as we look at these rates, we're asking that these user fees be adjusted so that they are commensurate with the rates just adopted, so that there is adequate revenue for them. As I mentioned under Proposition 218, we cannot charge more for a service to provide a subsidy to someone else. So in looking at these user fees specifically related to solid waste, the City Council, when they adopted these user fees at 50%, meant that we were not collecting adequate revenue for those costs. Because the enterprise fund in solid waste does not receive funding from any other source, whether that be the general fund or anything else, necessarily they come from user fees. So in that case, the rates just established would be subsidizing these user fees if we do not adjust them. So quite frankly, I'm asking the City Council tonight to adjust these user fees to make them commensurate with the rates that were just approved. There are approximately 10 of them that are in your handout. Once again, this is a public hearing. I could go through each of those, but in essence, they are based on the same cost of service and the rates that we put together for the rates. These are just user fees, essentially additional services that the city provides that are not property related, so they don't fall under the Prop 218 requirement, but they do require approval by City Council, and setting those user fees at a rate commensurate with the Prop 218 rates for user fees. And rates ensures that there's not a subsidy one way or the other, that as a user utilizes the service, they pay for the service. So that is the request of staff this evening. Once again, this is a request that the City Council also conduct a public hearing on that. And at the conclusion of that, we'll be requesting that the City Council adopt these adjust these user fees. These are user fees the City Council has already previously adopted. They were just at a lower rate.
Okay, questions from council? Ms. Soto?
Thank you. So it would be, in essence, us bringing up the fees so that they're 100% covered versus the 50% that we have adopted back in April, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Waterfield?
So what we're asking to come from the general fund is to make up for the user fees for utilities.
The request, the request for these user fees to be set is so that there is adequate revenue to cover the costs, so that they do not have to be subsidized from somewhere. They cannot be subsidized out of the solid waste fund because that would be a violation of Proposition 218. It would have to come from another source.
And what would that other source be?
Primarily, it would either be grants or the general fund. However, staff's recommendation is based on that these are services that are requested of the city, and that the fees should be paid by those requesting the service. So much as the Prop 218 rates are set based on the size of the container that you're requesting or the number of days of service. Likewise, if you are asking for one of these other services that are user fee related, we're asking the City Council to set those user fees at a rate to cover that expense.
Mm-hmm.
And you're asking what percentage of that to be, 100%?
So
of recovery cost?
Yes. So the table that's in the council agenda report provides
and I can't read that because it's so darn little.
They have the current fees, and as I stated, most of those were adopted by the City Council at the 50%. Some of these are also fines that are set by Senate Bill 1383 for the contamination of organics. They tell us what we have to do. So the request this evening is to do that. There may be, otherwise, there may be some inadvertent, if the user fees are not set commensurate with the cost-based rates, you might have a situation where somebody calls for a one-time service on let's say a residential trash can. Hey, I had a big party over the weekend and I want to have an extra pickup. As you can imagine, the most cost-effective way for the city to provide service is that it's on a route. We hit your neighbor, we hit you, you hit your next neighbor, and we keep going along, and it's cost-effective. Right now, with the 50% set for those user fees, if somebody called for a one-off, they would call staff, and that takes staff time to answer the phone. They would have to get hold of the collection supervisor to tell them to send a truck driver off route who might be driving halfway across town, pick up just that can, go back all the way to their route. Without adjusting these user fees to the commensurate price, they might be getting that service actually cheaper than the once-a-week service we're already providing. So it's not reflective of the cost to the city to provide that service that's being requested. So my request tonight of the council is to set those fees commensurate to the cost of the city to provide the service.
And you're saying if we don't set those fees, then you're going to have to look for grants or ask from the general fund to make up those costs?
There would need to be another source. I suspect the city manager would have some comment regarding the general fund.
Oh, I'm sure he would. So would I.
Madam Mayor, it would either be a reduction of the service because there isn't the funding for it. And I think Mr. Springer's point is the example he used of potentially having that one-off service be cheaper means that therefore would be subsidized by some other funding source within the solid waste fund, which would then violate Prop 218.
Mm-hmm.
So the proposal here was we did the cost analysis several months ago. The council said, let's raise the fees at 50% this time, 50% for the remainder. As we've then updated the solid waste collection fees here, we need to align the user fees with that. And so to do that, we've already done the cost study that the council's reviewed, and to bring it up to 100% then would have the parity and then comply with Prop 218.
Thank you. Other questions from the council? Mr. Cordero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Springer, the term you're using in here is user fees. And this is going to translate into the person or persons using the service are paying the fee, as opposed to the fee being paid by sales tax or property tax or some other revenue source. So I'm the one who needs the service, I'm the one who's going to pay for it. And that's how this is designed to work, so that we're not charging somebody for something they're not actually using.
That is what staff is recommending, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I kind of understood that, but I felt the urge to say it.
Any other questions of Mr. Springer right now?
Yeah. No. I have none.
Okay. Did you have your hand up? Okay.
No, Madam Mayor.
So I'll open up the public hearing. Madam Clerk, do we have any requests to speak or written correspondence?
We have no request to speak here in the building, and I have no written communications. And at this moment, I have no Zoom hands raised, but maybe just give it a moment and see if there's any hands raised. Nope. Nope.
I'll close the public hearing and bring this item back to the council for any discussion and a motion.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution approving the solid waste user fees at 100% cost recovery. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Ms. Soto.
Thank you. When it comes to the user fee, back in April when we were first having this conversation, I was troubled by the fact that the council decided to only raise the fees by 50%, because I know, based on the reports that were given by staff, that meant that we were still going to continue to be in a deficit because we weren't able to pay for the cost of these particular services, and that every year we're going to continue to be behind. And my concern is that if we don't make these adjustments the way that we're doing them now, that years down the line our ratepayers are going to see a dramatic increase that's going to be a lot less affordable. And so that's why I support these adjustments.
Any other discussion? Okay. No further discussion. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
Councilmember Soto?
Aye.
Councilmember Waterfield?
No.
Councilmember Escobedo?
No.
Madam Mayor Patino?
Aye. Next, we have a regular business item. Madam Clerk, could you please read the title?
The City Council will consider authorizing the issuance of water and wastewater revenue refunding bonds.
Staff report is being made by Director of Finance, Ms. Harvey.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. Tonight, I will present for your consideration staff's recommendation to refinance outstanding water and wastewater 2012A bonds. Okay. So first, I will just give you a brief history of the bonds and how we got here. So originally, the bonds were issued in 1993 and 1997, and they were to fund infrastructure for state water and additional 4,900 acre feet of entitlement. And they also were used for construction and improvements to water and wastewater facilities. In 2012, the city issued refunding bonds. They're 2012A and 2012B refunding bonds. And they were issued to refund and restructure a portion of the 1993 and 97 bonds. The debt service payment schedule for those bonds was from 2012 through 2036. And in 2018, the 2012 bonds were completely paid off, so we only have the 2012A bonds outstanding. And in addition, we have one final payment that we need to make on the 1997 bonds, and that's due in August of 2022. So the next slide here is our plan on how we're going to refund the bonds. And I just want to, as an overall summary, is essentially what we're doing here is refinancing the outstanding bonds for the same period of time. It's similar to how when you refinance your mortgage and you have a lower rate and you can reduce your costs, you can go out and get a better deal. And that's essentially what we're doing, is getting cost savings. We're not going to be funding any additional construction of items or gathering anything else. We're just going to be refunding that debt. So in that, our plan is to use the 97 bonds to pay those off using a debt reserve that we have that was required as part of the 2012 refunding. And we had to set that aside with our trustee, our bond trustee, so it's held in trust for the payment of the bonds, so we can utilize that to pay those off. And then the 2012 A bonds that are outstanding will be fully refunded with the 2021 A bonds. And the 2021 bonds will be in the senior position and the only system debt on the books. And what that means is that right now we have the 97 bonds and we have the 2012 bonds. The 97 are senior to the 2012. Once we pay this and refinance these, we will only have the one bonds, and that will be secured by the wastewater and wastewater revenue. So we're pledging our revenue, saying we have enough revenues over the time to pay for these bonds. The final maturity will be February of 2036, which is the same maturity date of the current bonds. So we're not extending our time. Sometimes when we do a mortgage for our house, we extend that time. We say, oh, we'll pay it off in 30 more years and to get a lower rate. But in this particular case, or a lower payment, in this particular case, we're not doing that. We're just refinancing for the same period of time. And by doing this is the big reason we're doing this, really the only real reason we're doing this, is that we'll be getting an average annual cash flow savings of about $722,000 over those 15 years. So the next slide here just shows how we're going to use the funds that we generate, how we're generating the funds, and where those are going. So the first column there is the refunding of the 28th bond. So this is how we'll end up being. So we'll issue the 2021 bonds and receive funds through the principal amount of about 35.9 million. And we'll also receive some funds through that sale of premium on the bonds of about 6.8 million. And then we'll be able to utilize some of those reserve funds that were held with the trustee of about 2.2 million. So about 45 million overall of total sources. And we'll use those to pay off on the escrow deposit line, that is to pay off the 2012 outstanding bonds. And then there is a cost, just like when you refinance a mortgage, there's a cost associated with refinancing. And so the cost of issuance is $233,000, and then underwriter's discount is $175,000. So that's how they'll be spent for that. The middle column there is just showing that the 97 bonds that will be utilizing the reserve funds that are already set aside with our trustee, and the amount of the cost of issuance, which is about $1,000. So that's essentially how the money that we'll receive and how much will be going out. So, and then the next slide is, again, this is the real reason we're here today and recommending this, is our existing payments for the 2012 bonds that we have left to pay is about 60.2 million. If after refunding and with the 2021A, the total payments would be about 49.4 million, which leads to a total estimated savings of about 10.8 million over the 15 years. And the next slide here, and I apologize, it is small, but I wanted to put it in here anyway. It is actually the debt service schedules of the two, and so it has how much each payment is per year. On the first column there has it by, is for the 2012, so our existing payments. And then on the the middle column, that is the refunding payment amounts. And then on the far right, it shows the amount of savings each year. And then at the bottom, it totals down and has the average. You might note that in the first 2 years, the first year, we have a little bit of a savings, just a little over 100,000. And then, but in 2023, we actually pay a little more in that payment in the refunding, about 86,000 compared to the existing. However, the rest of the time, the majority of it, it's about 860,000 savings per year until that last year, which is, a little bit less because it's just one payment. So on average, again, it's about 722,000 annually on average for those 15 years. So with that, the recommendation is that City Council adopt a resolution authorizing the issuance of the not to exceed $45 million water and wastewater revenue refunding bonds, Series 2021A, and approving the execution and delivery of certain documents in connection with those and certain other matters. And what that means is for those issuance costs, there's different contracts and different documents that we have to generate, which are part of those exhibits that are with the resolution that we have to do. And so those are to capture those as well and approve those. And that concludes my presentation, and I am available for questions. And I also have on the line Dan Cox from K&N Financial and Doug Brown from Stradling, and John Guzman from Johnson. Okay.
Any
John
questions
Summer.
from council? Ms. Waterfield?
You talk about the 97 bonds that are left. How many were there originally when we first started doing the State Water project?
Oh.
I always ask those questions, don't I?
Not sure I have that number with you. How much the total? We might have it in here.
Yeah.
I have the total amount.
So these are the 97 left that have not matured?
they hadn't matured and we didn't refund them completely on the 2012. So in 2012, we could not refund all of them. It was a much more complicated refunding when they did 2012. And so there was some differences in the types of bonds that they had and whether the timing of which they could do that. I don't know, Dan might be able to, the team that we have advising us is the same team that did 2012. And Mr. Springer and I have been working on this, and neither of us were involved in that refunding, so they may actually have a little bit more information on that if you'd like to.
If they have any comment, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, great.
Mr. Cox, are you available to speak?
Yes, good evening, Mayor, members, council. This is Dan Cox, and we're next Berkeley, California. I am looking for the amount of the 97 bonds that were initially issued. We did not work on that transaction, but we worked on the 2012 issue, which refunded a portion of the bonds. The 2012 issue was originally $50 million, and of the portion that we didn't refund, they didn't have a recall feature, which is why a portion of the 97 CFPs are still outstanding and still about to be paid off.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council?
I do.
Yeah. Mr. Escobedo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I would like kind of like normalize the benefits of doing this. So, because sometimes the concepts and the conversation, it's not I would like this to be more, so everybody who's watching us from the, know exactly what's the benefit of these kind of actions.
Thank you for that question. The benefit of doing this is essentially saving the interest and the payment. So overall, if we didn't do anything at all and we just stayed the course, we would be paying, and I should go back to my number, we would be paying $60.2 million if we didn't do this at all. If we do this and we refinance these bonds, we're expecting that it's the same period of time, the same number of payments, that we will only have to expend $49.4 million. So we will have an estimated savings of that $10.8 million over those 15 years. So what that will do, and like I said, it was about $722,000 annually on an average basis. Those savings then are now part of the water and wastewater funds, and they are able to utilize for other operating costs or capital costs or those kind of costs that would help offset those.
So that would mean that that might prevent, to increase the fee for water in the future. Can that be said, or?
I would put it in a manner of if all things are equal, meaning no other costs go up, and everything stays exactly the same, and the only thing we changed is this: theoretically, the rates may go down slightly. They would be incorporated in there. That's really simplistic of that, because there's a lot of things like Mr. Springer is going, oh, don't say they're going down. Because that'll then go into this Prop 218 process, so that'll be part of that whole process. And so those revenues that were generated, they're not really generated, they're savings. So it just reduces the cost, not the overall cost, not the... Yeah. Mr. Springer, did you want to add something to that?
So, thank you, Madam Mayor and council members, Councilmember Escobedo. Much like we talked about the solid waste rates, there are pressures on rates. The great thing about this bond refunding is it's rarely, right? It's an opportunity to save money. We have a unique opportunity because of very low interest rates that we can essentially save the ratepayers money. In this particular case, when we look at, there's not significant savings in the next 2-year horizon. It's more or less the expenses that we had predicted in with the existing rates that we have. The rates that the city council set run through the next 2 fiscal years, which more or less match on that chart. You saw the first 2 years. Importantly, after that additional $750,000 a year equates to about 1.5% of the annual revenue of that fund. So if you think of it in that way, for example, we just talked about solid waste rates increasing at 3.75%, let's say, on average. Think that this refunding reduces the pressures by 1.5%. It's kind of a pressure relief. At this point, based on what we're looking at for cost escalations and inflation and that sort of thing, I can't say that it would directly point toward rates decreasing or something like that, but it is absolutely, over the course of this horizon, an expense that we were expecting that won't be expecting to the tune of about 1.5% per year.
Perfect, thank you.
Questions? Any other questions? Madam Clerk, do we have any written correspondence or requests to speak?
No, Madam Mayor, we do not have any requests to speak or written communications from in-house, and I am not seeing any hands raised in Zoom who wish to talk about this item.
Okay, I'd like to bring this item back to the council for any further discussion and/or a motion.
If there's no discussion, I would like to make a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $45 million water and wastewater revenue refunding bonds, Series 2021A.
I'll second that motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to adopt a resolution authorizing the issuance of the water and wastewater revenue refunding bonds, Series 2021A. Any further discussion?
I liked the example of the home refinancing. Made a lot of sense.
I would say, Mayor, that I could only hope to be busy on February the 1st, 2036.
If not, Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Escobedo.
Aye.
Councilmember Cordero.
Aye.
Councilmember Soto.
Aye.
Councilmember Waterfield. Aye. Madam Mayor Patino.
Aye. Next, we have another regular business item to consider. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title?
The City Council will consider providing policy guidance to the Santa Barbara County Citizens Independent Redistricting Commission.
And staff report is being made by City Manager, Mr. Stillwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. So this item is an opportunity for the City Council to provide policy guidance to the Santa Barbara County Citizens Independent Redistricting Commission regarding important factors of the city for them to consider in drawing county supervisorial district boundaries. And the independent commission is a new process. This is the first time they have used an independent commission to redraw the supervisorial districts for Santa Barbara County. In November of 2018, there was a statewide general election, and Santa Barbara County voters approved Measure G that formed an 11-member independent redistricting commission to establish the electoral district boundaries in Santa Barbara County for the upcoming decade following the 2020 census data. And so the primary goal when developing election districts is to draw lines that respect neighborhoods, history, and geographical elements. The Santa Barbara County Citizens Independent Redistricting Commission began meeting earlier this year to review, discuss, and deliberate redistricting statutes, public outreach plans, and mapping tools for constituents used during a series of public meetings that will be held countywide. They're encouraging the public to participate in the redistricting process, and they anticipate that redistricting process to be completed by the end of this year, December 2021. The commission's schedule will move aggressively after October 18th meeting, after their October 18th, 2021 meeting, when initial draft maps will be accepted, and it'll be beneficial for the commission to have guidance from the City Council regarding supervisorial district boundaries. Each supervisorial district will need to encompass approximately 89,300 residents, and so each 5 district has to have about that same amount of residents. Santa Maria's census population is 109,707 residents, And so Santa Maria would have to be in more than one supervisorial district. And the commission would benefit from the city's input on where the line should be drawn in dividing Santa Maria, so they can have that input as they're reviewing maps and revising maps moving forward. And again, I mentioned the commission proceeds quickly. Staff will not likely have time to return to the city council for formal direction on those various map proposals. And so to facilitate input, staff recommends the council authorize an official or officials of the city, such as the mayor, mayor pro tem, or city manager, to provide comment during the process consistent with the council policy guidance that the council will hopefully adopt tonight. The specific policy guidance proposals we are proposing is first, that cities within Santa Barbara County should be considered communities of interest and wholly contained within a single supervisorial district. The city of Santa Maria, with its population exceeding that of a single supervisorial district, should not be divided among more than 2 supervisorial districts. An amended number 3 that we developed over the weekend is that supervisorial district boundaries in the city should follow major thoroughfares. That was one that the council talked about with the council district boundaries, and I think it applies for the county boundaries as well. That would then make the 4th policy guideline that the Cuyama Valley should be included with one of the supervisorial districts within containing a portion of the city of Santa Maria. And consistent with the next policy guideline would be consistent with cities as a community of interest. The city of Guadalupe should be included within one of the supervisorial districts containing a portion of the city of Santa Maria, and at least the portion of Orcutt that contains Rigetti High School, since the Guadalupe students go to Rigetti High School. And again, the commission has several meetings scheduled between now and December 8th, when their goal is to adopt the map. And they'll be receiving maps, revising the maps, and focusing on public, or having public input to focus on the maps during the month of November. And that concludes my report. We do have the resolution for the council, and so if the council were able to adopt a resolution tonight, whether it's this or a variant of this, we would then submit it to the commission for its consideration as official guidance from the government of the city of Santa Maria of what our input would be that they consider as they're revising maps. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions from the council?
No questions, just discussion, but.
What is the population of Cuyama? Oh, I'm sorry. Well, then I was going to ask you what the population of Guadalupe was, so I was... That's easier? 11? Okay. Okay. So just in the city of Santa Maria, we're over by 20,407. I know that in years past, Cuyama has been in the 5th district, which was Santa Maria, and Guadalupe has been in the 4th district, which would also take in a portion of Santa Maria. So,
Did you say 700?
Like 600 people.
600? Cuyama, New Cuyama is
600?
700?
6 to 7, yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought it was more than that, but okay.
It depends if you have Cuyama, New Cuyama, the valley, but yeah. So a few hundred in the Cuyama Valley.
Okay. Okay, Madam Clerk, any other questions? Mr.
Mayor,
Cordero.
not as much a question, but more of a comment that I think it's important that we have the communities have something in common as opposed to the way it is now with Guadalupe being in common with Isla Vista. And the two are diametrically different, just not the same at all. Whereas we have some things in common with Guadalupe, and we have some things in common actually with, I think, with Cuyama.
Cuyama, yeah.
So and I think Cuyama is now a part of the 1st district. It's down with Montecito. I don't know how you can get any more of a contrast between two communities than Cuyama and Montecito. So I hope that we can encourage them to leave communities that have common interests together. However that wording is, I think that Mr. Stillwell worded it just fine.
Yeah, and I would agree. And I know that as Cuyama used to be in the high school district at one time, the
Yes.
Santa Maria Joint Union High School District went all the way out to Cuyama. But they come in here, I guess, most of the time to do their shopping unless they go to TAP. They come here to use their medical facilities, as does Guadalupe. Yeah, but so does Buellton and Solvang. I mean, they come up here and use, because we have a lot of shopping up here, so they also come up here and use our medical facilities. Okay, any other questions? No? Madam Clerk, do we have any written correspondence?
No, Madam Mayor, we have no written communications and no requests to speak.
No requests to speak? I'll bring this item back to the council for any discussion and/or a motion. Ms. Soto?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with somewhat of the comments that you all made regarding communities of interest. My only concern would be having Guadalupe be part of, I don't necessarily agree that Guadalupe has similar interests with Orchid, other than the school. And even then, in my experience, the students from Guadalupe that attend Rigetti High School, oftentimes, don't necessarily, there's a stark difference even in the student population between the Guadalupe students and the Orchid students. And so, in my opinion, I don't believe that Guadalupe should be included with Orchid. However, I do agree with it being included with the city of Santa Maria, because I do see us having more similarities and commonalities and that with Guadalupe than Orchid does. And so that would be my only comment.
Yeah, and that would probably that's probably the way it would have to go, because personally, I think it's the most important thing is keeping most of Santa Maria together. Okay, and we know that isn't going to happen, but we don't want it, in my thinking, we don't want it divided up into 3 supervisorial districts, 2. And so I would like to have the biggest chunk of Santa Maria just kept in one district. And then pulling in Cuyama. So then that pushes Guadalupe into part of Santa Maria and part of the 4th district. And when Guadalupe was in the 4th district, it worked really well, because I worked in that. But having it in the 3rd district, I don't think works as well as it is now, because it's with Isla Vista. But it would be with part of Santa Maria and then with Orchid.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I would like to make a comment.
Yes.
Yeah, I have actually the pleasure of working with Rigetti High School. I'm the liaison between Hancock and Rigetti High School, and I do share that experience that usually Rigetti students are, the students that come from Guadalupe to Rigetti usually identify more with Santa Maria. They feel that they're, even in the application they put Santa Maria. They don't. So I think that it would be good to keep as much as we can the city into one district and not just spread everything out. Just gonna be a mess, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you. We had no request to speak. No. Okay. So do I have a motion?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
I think there's some, there are a couple revisions, I believe, to the resolution that if you want to include them, if otherwise it's fine.
We probably should read them.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
So then, what I'm hearing is, so we keep the whereases as are on the resolution. The therefores, then the first one would be the cities within Santa Barbara County should be considered communities of interest and wholly contained within a single supervisorial district. The second would be the city of Santa Maria with its population exceeding that of a single supervisorial district should not be divided among more than 2 supervisorial districts and should predominantly be in a single district. Okay. And number 3 then would be supervisorial boundaries in the city of Santa Maria should follow major thoroughfares. Number 4, I think what I heard would be, we could add to the beginning, communities of common interest should remain together, and the Cuyama Valley should be included within one of the supervisorial districts containing a portion of the city of Santa Maria. And then number 4, consistent with cities as a community of interest, the city of Guadalupe should be included within one of the supervisorial districts containing a portion of the city of Santa Maria. And leave out the rest, or leave in the part that says, and at least the portion of Orchid that contains Rigetti High School?
I would disagree, because it was at one time, and I think it worked very well, because what we're going to be doing is giving up more Santa Maria out of one supervisorial district. It's what we're going to be doing, and trading off for Guadalupe. I don't know that we can take Cuyama and plunk it over on the west side of Santa Maria. And so I'm thinking Cuyama is going to come into Santa Maria at some point, but keeping more of Santa Maria intact.
You're not, if I may, Madam Mayor, it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to separate Guadalupe, and that's not our job anyway, that belongs to the county, but I mean, it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to separate Guadalupe from Orchid, since they are almost contiguous.
Right. But that's why I would just like to see that still left in there, with the portion of Orchid that contains Rigetti High School. And we're not going to be figuring it out anyway. They're going to do it. I don't know how they're going to do it, but they'll be figuring it out. Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like Guadalupe residents do all their shopping in Santa Maria, have their doctor's visits in Santa Maria. They all do, though. They all do. They all do. But to me, the first thing is to keep Santa Maria as much intact as we can, and we're going to lose part of it because we. Well, I'm not in.
Yeah, the magic number is 89,300, and we're 20,407 over that. So they're going to have to figure out how they're going to split us up. Okay.
So then Guadalupe would be in your district.
Mr. Stillwell?
And so so then the motion would then be to leave that one as written. It would be a new number 5. And then just to finish, the new number 6 on page 2 of the resolution would be the city council authorizes the mayor, mayor pro tem, and city manager to engage in the commission's accelerated map adoption schedule consistent with city council policy guidance that you've just talked about.
So moved on.
Okay.
Okay, that was amended.
Did I have a second on this?
Second, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so Madam Clerk, you want to call the roll?
Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
Councilmember Waterfield?
Aye.
Councilmember Escobedo?
Aye.
Councilmember Soto?
No.
And Madam Mayor Patino?
Aye. The next item will be a report by City Manager, Mr. Stillwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. The first note I want to make is tomorrow morning, October 20th, is the State of the City at 8 a.m. And so we encourage people to tune in to learn about the state of the city. Mayor Patino will be presenting, not to give away much, but the state of the city is strong, which she'll describe how it is tomorrow morning. And it is at the Radisson at 8 a.m. and I also believe available on Zoom. And you can sign up through the Chamber of Commerce.
Starts at 7, I believe.
I have it at 7, it's from 7 to 9.
7 to 9? Okay.
You had what?
Oh, the breakfast
I
is
have it
7
on the
presentation.
7 to
so
9
today.
this day.
7?
Yeah, I don't know why.
That's 7 in the a.m.
I'm not gonna get there, sorry.
And then the next meeting of the City Council is November 2nd, and we will have the first quarter report. And then we anticipate having a presentation from Code Enforcement update. And that concludes my report.
Before we start the oral reports of council members, we have lost several people in our community lately, and I would like to acknowledge a couple right now. Ed Flynn passed on September 30th, and maybe some people didn't know him that are sitting at the dais here, but he spent a lot of time with the youth in our in our community and in our valley, and he coached a lot of teams over so many years, I don't know how many years, but put in a lot of time and had an effect on a lot of kids' lives. And I just think it's important to recognize him. And then we had the passing on October 5th of Agatha Noel Shorter Lewis, who has a great impact in our community, very active in the NAACP, very active in this community. And I would like to take a moment of silence in Agatha Shorter Lewis's memory. Thank you very much. And I would like to do the oral reports now of council members. Should we start with you, Mr. Cordero?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On October the 11th, I attended a badge pinning ceremony at the Santa Maria Police Department and was very pleased to see the people that were being recognized there, the promotions that were made, and I was very impressed with the young man that came over from the Valley. His name is Omar. I thought, yeah, that's kind of not a common name, but talking to him, he just strikes me as someone, it was one of the things that he said was that he didn't really come to work here, he came to a place so that he can retire. And I think that says quite a bit for a young person like that. So it was...
until he found out the price of housing.
He came so that he can retire. I didn't mean to imply that he wasn't going to work when he gets here. But the badge painting ceremony was exciting for me because I knew the young man that was promoted to sergeant, and it meant a great deal for me to be there. And then on the 14th, I had a meeting out at one of the recycling centers, and then I attended a ribbon cutting event for the North Blosser project. And I have to say that the project that was done up there, I don't normally travel that area, but the way that they did it certainly brings awareness when you're driving northbound on Blosser and you get up to where the work was done, and like there's something here. It raises your attention to your drivings, and I was very impressed with the work that they did on North Blosser. And that's about it. Thank you.
Mr. Escobedo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On October 14, I attended the ribbon cutting ceremony on North Blosser. I was so happy. It's just it's a great project. So I really want to recognize Mr. McCune and his team for that area. It just I posted on social media, and some of my friends like, "Hey, Carlos, let's go and ride our bikes. Let's do it." So it's a place where you can. Before that, it was just chaos. It was even trying to get on the app, just turn to the right. You feel like somebody's gonna hit you from behind. It's just gonna crash. It was a lot of racing, a lot of complaints about it. Those residents that were complaining about it, they don't just stop sending emails. They say thank you. So I want to extend that, as I mentioned before. It's a great project. Hopefully we're gonna keep it that way. It's gonna be taken care, and hopefully we're gonna see more of that in the city. And on October 16, I attended Santa Barbara County Veterans Stand Down, and also would like to say that was a great event. Thank you to Supervisor Stila Vanino and his team for making that happen. It was great to see and serve. And there was a quote I really like: "Serve the people that serve us." So I think that's really powerful. So thank you for everybody who made that happen, and that'll be my report. Thank you.
Ms. Waterfield?
I want to report, I did several things, but there's just one thing I really want to report on, and I did the walk and talk with our code enforcement officers. I got to encourage every single council member, Madam Mayor, that you need to go and do this. I think we hit 180 homes. We knocked on the doors, asked them if there were any issues, if there were any things they didn't quite understand with the city, if they had problems with people parking trailers or things on their streets that did not belong there, or what they could do to, to help spruce up their neighborhood or what else. It was just great. And it was wonderful. It was with Joy and her whole team. And we had 3 police officers as well that walked with us. And we touched on, it was originally called Driftwood Residential Area. I think that name has changed, but it's over on Enos and Miller Street. And great people that live there. They just came out and, first of all, wanted to know what we were doing there and thought something was going on. But when they found out that we were there for them, and if there was any concerns they had, please call. But every council member and mayor, you need to go do that because it was good.
What did you call it?
It's called the Walk and Talk. Walk and Talk, and just get a hold of Joy or just get a hold of, our wonderful attorney here, and he'll set you right up.
Ms. Soto?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have much to report other than, so you all probably noticed that I was absent at our last council meeting, and that's because I was attending the memorial service of one of my dearest friends. Her name was Kate Adams, Dr. Kate Adams. She was a professor, an activist, and what I like to, a social justice warrior. She passed away about 3 weeks ago, suddenly, and, it's a tremendous loss to our community, to students, and so, if, we can also, close the meeting in her honor, I'd appreciate that, Madam Mayor, as well. Another part that I would also I'd like to request is that this evening we had a number of residents come to our meeting to request that we agendize and revisit the conversation about rent stabilization within mobile home parks. And, I'd like to request that be an item put on the agenda for discussion at a future meeting.
Thank you. October 7th, I attended the 3CE launch celebration for, I think Buellton was launched and Goleta was launched into the 3C. Attended the virtual housing strategies to help address the homelessness crisis. October 9th, I went to the flag signing event at the Japanese American incarceration, and they had these large American maps that the Japanese people in the area, and they didn't know actually who all would show up, and they signed these maps, and these were people that were incarcerated, some of them as young children, incarcerated. I attended the Jack in the Box grant opening and attended the mayor's ball. On October 11th, did my mayor's teen council meetings, and then that afternoon went to the badge pinning promotion and recognition at our police department. On the 13th, I was in the North County Sub-Regional meeting, and then I have been doing several virtual meetings on the human trafficking because I think it's very important that we shed as much light and do as much as we can in the area of Santa Maria on human trafficking. Another virtual meeting on the human trafficking on the 14th, and on the 14th afternoon, the city ribbon cutting on Blosser Road improvements, and hopefully, because we've had a lot of tragic accidents there, and it will cut down on those because the road is narrower now, and I can't say they can't go as fast because they probably still will, but at least it's going to be some calming done. On the 16th, I attended and worked the veterans stand down. I don't know how many veterans we had come out, but I was at the gate where I was working the gate where all the volunteers came. And it's really, really neat to see all the volunteers from our area that come in to help the veterans. And you go into the buildings where, when we first started this, a lot of the clothes were donated. And people would clean out their closets and donate not so good stuff and not so clean stuff. And now they've got a lot of new things, jackets and boots and clothing for our veterans. On the 17th of October, I attended the first 3CE annual meeting. Yesterday, I attended with our police chief and Ms. Waterfield and one of our police officers, the Grizzly Youth Academy tour in San Luis Obispo. And that's something, if you haven't been, you really need to go. And they take at-risk youth and they make sure they get educated and they get squared away so that they have direction in life, because a lot of these kids they're good kids. They just don't have direction in life and come from, very, I shouldn't say bad homes, but maybe dysfunctional, or they just don't maybe know how to parent, but getting these kids on the good road that they need to go on. And this evening, I would like to read this because I think this is very, very important. We lost a former mayor, council member, and police chief in Joe Centeno. He was a very accomplished, a fair-minded public servant who served his beloved Santa Maria for 5 decades as mayor, council member, police officer, police chief, and as a Santa Barbara County supervisor. Died at home Thursday evening, October 14th. He was 86. He was a pillar of strength in the community. He made sound decisions and always in the best interest of Santa Maria and the city he loved. And I was privileged to serve with him on this council. I can remember my first meeting when he was mayor. Mr. Centeno consistently strived to improve the quality of life for all, including children and the underserved. He encouraged the professionalization of law enforcement and accountability among all members of the police department. He won a Santa Maria City Council seat in 1994 and was reelected in 1998. While on the City Council, he was chair of the West Main Street Revitalization Committee. I was on that, and that was a long time before I was ever on the council. Established a task force on overcrowding, supported building youth programs, including handball courts at Evans Park, and helped establish Los Adobes de Maria, a low-income housing project for ag workers. Born September 5th, 1935, in Naples on the Gaviota coast, not Naples, Italy. He was raised in a boxcar with his 6 siblings and his parents. His father worked on the railroad, and Joe grew up hunting and fishing on the land that is now Vandenberg Forest Space. When he was a boy, his family moved from the Gaviota coast near to Santa Maria. An interview he did, he said, "I didn't know what poverty was until high school. When I saw that what other people had, it made me a better person." And if you know Joe, he was so good to everyone and cared so much and loved his city. And I know that, Mr. Cordero, you had something to say tonight, and I certainly would like to recognize and close our meeting in honor of Mr. Centeno. It meant so much to our city of Santa Maria. And Ms. Soto also had a request.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it was real common for Chief Centeno that he would give direction and then ask you to go take care of it. And I sometimes remember thinking as a young patrolman that, well, why don't you go take care of it? It's your project. But I think that I learned that he was giving us as young people the opportunity to learn how to take credit for some of these things, when in fact it was him who did it. So he was never one to circle himself around and say, well, I did this. He allowed that excitement to be shared with everybody around him. And so he did some things. He came to the council. He worked with United Way. He worked with other organizations, and not by any design, but it seems as though I've followed many of those footsteps. I will not be going to the county. However, it's just remarkable how that's happened. And although not to take anything away from Chief Centeno, I want to acknowledge that we lost another great American, that being General Colin Powell. And he died also very recently. And it was said then, when he was still a general, still in the military, that someday he would be president. And it was said by people in my circle. And then today I heard it on the news that it was a missed opportunity that General Powell did not ever run for president. So, but a true American hero that we lost also. So thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Ms. Waterfield?
Mr. Centeno was a man's man, and he never called himself an elected official. He always referred to himself as a public servant. And in everything he did, as the mayor just read, he was a public servant to everybody he met. He did wonders for Cuyama. He did wonders for the school and the children of Cuyama with that swimming pool he had put out there. But he's a public servant, and now he's a servant of the Lord, serving the Lord whom he loved very, very much. And it was an honor to know you.
And you know what? He went out to Cuyama a lot when that was in the 5th District.
Oh my gosh,
he was always out there. Yeah.
Always there.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting is adjourned.
This was a